My name is Jurgen Appelo. I'm from the Netherlands. My apologies for that, okay? I'm Dutch, yes. I have to apologize. DNA, thousands of years ago. Anywho, so let's get started. I found that fascinating what Thomas talked about just before. Oh, over there. Thank you, Thomas. It was fascinating stuff. I listened carefully. So you would have gotten rid of me, I understand, because I'm a manager, so I would not be working here anymore. Clearly, and that might be a good thing. But I have to try and figure out what the role is of the manager in an agile world, in an agile organization. At least that's what I try to do in the last couple of decades. And I started as a really bad manager. At the end of the 90s, I was managing already my own small company, my own little internet startup that I had at the time. Was fascinating company, by the way. I had a business plan back then for my internet startup. It was 1999, so everything was amazing back then, and that business plan got me an award for Entrepreneur of the Year in the Netherlands. I was very proud of that. Entrepreneur of the Year in the Netherlands, I was. Yes. And but no, it comes. One moment. And I got 1 million euros of investment money from informal investors that they injected in the business plan. The business plan looked wonderful. It looked wonderful. It had graphics that went up. Like profit would go up according to my business plan, revenue would go up according to the plan, number of employees, my ego, everything would go up according to the plan. And we were very, very successful at spending all that money, that 1 million euros, until the last euro was gone 2 years later. We didn't find any customers though, because the plan didn't work. That's such a pity. We were not very agile back then. The word agile was not even invented within the context of software development. So yeah, that was pretty bad. But over time, I learned how to be better. And back then, I managed the organization as a machine. I did a lot of Gantt chart planning and everything like that. And people were parts of the machine, and I pushed them around, and that is bad management. Bad performance as a result. But now I travel the world. I was in Paris last week, and in Toulouse at Airbus, which is awesome. So people want to know now what my stories are of better management. And I'm going to share what my findings with you. It starts with build for meaning. You have to have companies that pursue a goal. There needs to be a purpose behind what you're doing. I call that my first bullet. The second one is you need to innovate as managers. You have to figure out new ways of managing the company. We do not only innovate in products and service delivery, but also in the way we organize that system itself. We need to accelerate learning, because we can only innovate when we learn things all the time, also as managers and leaders. And learning requires us to run experiments, try things all the time. As many experiments as possible. We only experiment when we feel playful. We know that since we were children, right? What does this button do? That's playing, that's experimentation. So I want people to be playful in organizations, because that will help them be experimental. That also requires a bit of happiness in the company. A dash of happiness will add to the playfulness. And finally, manage the system and not the people. I will have some examples of that so I can explain what that is about. But I don't want as a manager to manage individuals. I want them to manage each other, basically, in a self-organizing team. But someone is responsible for that system around them. That's my job. as the manager and leader. So I call that my 7 silver bullets. My seven themes over the last 20 years or so that I have tried to be a better manager. Are there any managers in the room? Let me see. Any managers, leaders, team leaders, development managers, whatever? Okay, I see a number of hands go up. Okay, good. So for the managers in the room, I have a very special version of this slide that makes it easier to understand for the managers. Because they're usually not really good with colors and everything. So this is the same information, but then with 7 boring bullet points. And very important to have on a management slide, something going up, okay? I have an award-winning business plan. I know what I'm talking about. It had every page, it had something going up. That is how you convince managers and leaders. So, and with an eye for detail, because I'm a perfectionist, I even use the font Comic Sans, like all the other executives in the world do, you see? So, I'm a specialist here. So, 7 silver bullets, and you will see these across my stories. You will recognize them every now and then, or sometimes I might point them out. So it starts with the first bullet that resonates right with this example. The work expo and identity symbols give people a purpose. An identity is a feeling of why are we doing this. Let me start with some nice messages that I have received from some of my readers. Carol sent me this a couple of years ago. Your art and ability to capture ideas visually is really fantastic. Just scrolling through is a buffet for the brain. I love that. Carol must be a poet or something like that. A buffet for the brain, wonderful. She might be a writer herself. This one is by Betsy. Betsy wrote, your English is remarkably good. You can see that Betsy is a very intelligent person right away. You have an incredible feel for the rhythm and idiom of English. You do a magnificent job and the text is a pleasure to read. Oh, thank you very much, Betsy. I have it above my bed and I look at it every night. And notice, by the way, that Betsy is one of the few people in the world who knows how to spell the word idiom, because usually when people send me emails, they spell it incorrectly with the letter T at the end, which is, of course, stupid. But Betsy is smart. And I have another one. This one is by Hamed from Iran, and he said, my greatest thanks for your astonishing book. Every page I read makes me wish to become a manager someday. And I thought, oh my God, no, more managers. It's the opposite of what I want. The tagline is better management with fewer managers. I failed, I'm just creating more. Now everyone wants to be a manager, it's so cool. But I appreciate the compliments, of course. And I hope that is what you recognize here. It is nice to get a compliment every now and then for the stuff that you're doing. It is also nice to get royalty statements from publishers, as I know from experience. But when I look at the moments when I feel happiest, it is when someone says, Jurgen, you did a nice job. Thank you. That really helped me. That makes me feel awesome. When people say they actually apply in their organizations the stuff that I've been writing about. Other examples, this is a photo that I took in Silicon Valley at a Persian restaurant. They want to be the best Persian restaurant in the Bay Area. That makes sense. They have newspaper articles, awards that they won, handwritten notes by clients. They want to be recognized as the place to go to if you're into Persian food. And it was awesome, I can testify. Other examples, these are pictures that I took at games company in Berlin, Wuga, if I remember well. This was sent to me by a French company. I have absolutely no idea what the robot in the tutu is all about, but they are proud of it, and that's awesome. That is awesome if you're proud of your robot in a tutu. And these are examples of artifacts, work expositions, basically, that for me showcase that people are proud of their jobs. They want everyone else to see that. I have an example of my own. When I started a company a couple of years ago to manage the licensing around Manager 3.0, I needed a company name. And I was inspired by this poster in Rotterdam, my hometown. This is a big billboard, meters wide, and it just says, Melisham hates her job. That's it. It's the only thing it says. It's been on that wall for 24 years now. And for 24 years, Melly has been hating her job. She sits there at her typewriting, smiling, hating. And that's so sad. There are many people like that. They smile, but they hate their job. Right? And I thought, I want to do something about that. Maybe that is the purpose of my company, help people be happier in their jobs, because I find that important. So I said to several friends of mine, we should help people be happier. We should help Melly be happier. So that became Happy Melly. That's the name of the company. And that has been very inspiring to the people involved. It turned into a community, and we borrowed the picture of Melly. I even met the photographer of that photo in the US, Ken Lum, because he's a photographer and creates works of art. And he was amazed that some community emerged in Europe based on his picture in Rotterdam, which is fun. Another metaphor that I'm using now for my new startup is about shape-shifting. You probably know this shape-shifter from X-Men, Mystique. There are others from Star Trek or Barba Papa. I often show in some of my other keynotes. There was a shape-shifter. And they change form according to context every day, and I like that as a metaphor, shape-shifting. And I now use that for my newest company, Agility Skills, which is all about helping companies be shape-shifters. And this imagery works. You have to think about these things as managers and leaders. What is it that people want to rally behind? What kind of symbolism, what kind of purpose can you use? I mean, our whole country, the Netherlands, was like painted orange just yesterday and 2 days ago. Some of you saw the Olympic Games where 3 Dutch caterers were on the podium and nobody else. That was so awesome. And of course, it makes them feel proud. And of course, the Dutch probably like skating even more than football, because at least with skating we have a chance of winning when the Germans also participate. Not with football. But that's symbolism as well. And I sometimes call it the T-shirt test that companies should apply to themselves. Are employees willing to go around with the company logo or slogan or whatever it is on the T-shirt, and do they hope that other people notice that T-shirt? Are they proudly showing it off? Then you've passed the T-shirt test. Yeah? I know plenty of people working at companies, they wouldn't want to be found dead in a T-shirt or sweater with the company logo on it, right? And then those companies have not passed the T-shirt test. The symbolism, the purpose fails, basically. So that is a crucial thing, I find, as a manager and leader. Another topic that I have felt interested in the last number of years. Nobody on my 2 teams has any titles. They can make their own titles if they want. On the Happy Melly team, we have a remote office manager. We have a zookeeper. We have a project bottleneck. I'm not kidding. That's the names they come up with for themselves. It's totally ridiculous, but it helps them have a bit of fun, and I don't care. I call myself Emperor God Overlord. That suits, notice the initials. That suits me pretty well, and I find that important. I find it important not to focus on the titles too much. And I've done a good number of workshops in the past. I don't do them anymore. Please don't ask. The last one was 3 years ago. I'm not doing any workshops anymore. But back then I did an exercise and I asked people, write on a couple of sticky notes the following. I want you to write your job title as it is on your contract, if you have any, and put it in the middle. So people had software developer, agile architect, team leader, PMO officer, team manager, boring, CEO. They were just self-employed people. Ridiculous. Anyways, so these are the titles that people have officially. And then I asked them, write on another sticky note how you would love to be seen. What is it that you would like on your Twitter profile? How you want other people to recognize you? Your most awesome title. And then they come up with agile enthusiast, happy agile manager, problem solver, facilitator of value creation, continuous learner. Mine is creative networker. I just came up with it. I thought that matches me. I like creative stuff, and I'm a bit of a networker around the world. And then at the bottom, I said, now write something very concrete, that your role on a project that you are attributed for, or that you are recognized for. And then we have the mundane stuff as product owner, scrum master, agile coach, developer. In my case, author. I'm the author of a book, so within that project, I am the author. Amazon calls me an author, right? But no matter how many books I write, even if it's 100, I will always be author within that context of book writing. Right? Amazon is never going to call me senior vice president of authoring, right? For having done this for 20 years or more. Right? That makes no sense. And that is the problem that we often have here in the middle, where the titles get longer and longer and longer until you end up with the senior vice president of the kitchen utensils. Because there's title inflation everywhere, and everyone is a manager nowadays, and a director, etc. But that makes no sense. And I've noticed that that basically it is trying to fulfill different purposes that you can already address with what you have at the top and what you have at the bottom. At the top you have self-expression, self-actualization. It is at the top of the pyramid of hierarchy of needs. Maybe some of you know that one by Maslow, the hierarchy of needs. At the top it says self-actualization. People want to express themselves. So let them call themselves anything they want. That makes them happy, right? So done. You have that out of the way. And people also want to be recognized for their contributions. They want some recognition and attribution of what they have done. And then hopefully they get invited to more and more interesting projects over time. So on Internet Movies database, you find which person has contributed to which movie and who was the lead animator and who was the main actor, etc., etc. Though that's basically what you see here, the roles on their projects. But you don't see anyone become senior vice president of actoring, right, on IMDb. So once you have those two, the need for the middle one, job title, has disappeared. Nobody needs job titles then anymore. Now, I understand that HR directors and those people cannot really just get rid of job titles next Monday. That will be a bit too difficult in many companies. But you could start by emphasizing the top and emphasizing the bottom. Right? Make sure that people can call themselves anything they want on the intranet, for example. Give them that freedom. And also recognize them for everything that they've done. Let them write their names all over the place, in all the artifacts, all the projects. So when I make videos with other people, I make sure that names are mentioned, because they played a role there. So the script is by Eric, and the voice is by Paul, etc. I want to recognize people. When we have websites, we make sure, at least as often as possible, that the names of the people involved are mentioned. Text by Jennifer, backend system Sergey. They want their names there. So then the titles become less and less important. So that's another thing that I have noticed. I'm just pulling stories from my own memories here with the help of a book. Another one about measurements. Ooh, interesting topic. How do we measure progress, Jurgen? So we now have people who enjoy working with each other towards a purpose, and they do not have titles, but they can call themselves anything they want. It motivates them and makes them feel happy. Now we need them to make a bit of progress. The traditional approach is KPIs. I'm sure some of you know that word, right? Key performance indicators, which basically means I give you a target and then you run. And if you run fast enough and you get to the target, I give you a bonus. If not, I will hit you in the head or something like that, right? Carrot and then stick principle. And I found a more modern practice that is called OKRs, Objectives and Key Results, that has been popularized over the last couple of years, primarily by Google, but actually they stole the practice from Intel, which is interesting. I was at Intel a couple of years ago in Portland at the Intel Agile and Lean conference, and I asked them, how many of you know about OKRs? And nobody raised their hands. So they didn't even know they had been robbed by Google at Intel. Fascinating. Anyways, Google borrowed OKRs from Intel and made it very popular. And I'll just give you an example because that's easier to understand. The O stands for objectives and the KR stands for key results. So this was the very first OKR that I created for myself. The first version of Managing for Happiness was actually called Workout, because then it was self-published, and I had my own alternative title back then. And of course, as an objective, I had increased the number of book sales. Duh, obviously. I had never self-published a full-color book before, so this was wildly experimental. So at the start of the first quarter, January 1st, I wanted more book sales. And then the key results, they are basically the targets I give myself. Those I defined as follows. Paper sales, 2,500. It was 1,100 at January the 1st, so I wanted to increase it to 2,500. Kindle sales, 5,000. EPUB sales, 1,000. That was like this. Because I've never done it before, I just thought, okay, this is doable, I hope. A couple of things are important with OKRs. You give yourself multiple key results. Why? Because with OKRs, we recognize that each metric is fallible. Metrics are always incomplete. They always paint just a part of the picture. So it is best to come up with at least 3 measurements for measuring this objective. How to look at it from different angles, right? So if your objective is a high quality release, then define in 3 different ways what high quality means, and then you measure those. And then you do whatever you need to do to work towards your key results. And by the end of the quarter, you measure yourself. You measure yourself. So March 31st, I had 1,940 paper sales. That was less than the 2,500 that I aimed for. It was 60% of that difference that I wanted to cover here. It's okay, not spectacular, but decent. 5,000, not by far. I had 2,825. That was 36% of the increase that I had hoped. And EPUB sales, my God, what a disaster. It went from 50 to 75, which was 3%. Any EPUB readers here in the room? Anyone? No? Oh, 2. Do you get your books from Pirate Bay or something like that? Oh, just kidding. I'm not selling anything. EPUB is not a particular popular format, apparently. So, and then you take the average, and it's 33%, and that was not that good. Not that good. But as I said, it was an experiment. I'd never done this before, so plenty of learning that I did throughout those 3 months. And that is the key with OKRs. The whole idea is that you learn. You set yourself difficult targets, and then you do your best, and then at the end of the quarter, you measure yourself, and you wonder, okay, what did I learn from this? And how can I take those learnings into the next iteration? The standard cadence is once every 3 months. But you can have other cadences if you want. Another crucial difference with KPIs is that you give yourself targets. Nobody should give other people OKRs, because then you do not understand OKRs, okay? Remember that. If anyone gives somebody else an OKR, they don't get it. They're doing KPIs and then rebranding them as OKRs, so you're back where you started. So give yourself OKRs. You can discuss them with other people, but like athletes and sports people, they give themselves targets, maybe with the help of a coach. So then we can track things like these were the OKRs of the previous quarter with my team. We had swimming angels because it's a startup, so we needed to find angel investors and raving champions. The community also was measured, so different metrics. This one at some point didn't make sense anymore apparently, so we just striked it out. And here we did a good score, 81. This was terrible, 12%, and 35 also not so good. Well, a lot of learning that we did. You know what the sweet spot is with OKRs? It's not 100%. Google says it's 70%. If you have 70%, 80%, that's good. Then probably it was hard, but not too hard. And that's perfect. If you have 100% on all your OKRs, then you are too lazy, apparently. You would just set yourself very easy targets, because you made them all. Next time, aim higher. And most importantly of everything, no bonuses attached. Imagine what would happen if a manager says, you get a bonus if you have at least 80% on your OKRs. What would happen with the targets you set for yourself? Right. Makes no sense. So also remember that. No bonuses connected. I went completely overboard with the whole OKR system as an experiment. I thought, okay, well, if I can have a target that I aim for, I could also maybe define targets in the opposite direction that would make me completely unhappy if I ended up there. And then I would have a scale for each of those metrics, like devastated until ecstatic. And then I could come up with a spreadsheet that would basically convert all those OKRs to nice colors. And that was so awesome. With Google Docs, you can configure the cells that they automatically turn green or red depending on where you are on the scale. And I went totally overboard, and I even created an index of all those OKRs. Wonderful! I had my own weekly index of how we were progressing along our OKRs. It took me hours to produce this. So I stopped doing this at some point. Someone should make a tool for that. But it was worth the experiment, and when we could see actual progress, so that was nice. So I also call this an example of a metrics ecosystem. But for me, metrics traditionally are hierarchically created. So the top manager has KPIs for their departments, and then the department have KPIs for all the units and for the teams, and it sort of trickles down the hierarchy. And with OKRs, that doesn't work like that. Yes, there are department OKRs, and you can have business unit OKRs, but it basically bounces up and down. There's a draft version of top management, and then they say, well, this is what we would like. Now you can come up with your own OKRs and figure out how you can contribute to the company OKRs, and then give us input. And then the input from the employees is also processed at the higher levels. There's a video of 1.5 hours about it. But it expresses that this is an ecosystem of people measuring each other. That's much better than a hierarchical structure. Everything is influencing everything, basically. So, I gave you a couple of examples, things that I have tried. Yes, I have also introduced Scrum and Agile in the company where I worked until 8 years ago, when I quit my job, when I produced my first book, Management 3.0. And one thing that I was very proud of at that time was, after I had introduced Scrum and Agile practices, turnover dropped from 17% to nearly 0. People didn't want to leave their jobs anymore. We had significant turnover at the company, but in my part of the organization, nobody wanted to leave anymore. In the other parts of the organization, they did, but not in my territory. And I attributed all of that to the Agile practices. People were happier. I gave them more freedom, more autonomy, more responsibility to manage their own calendars with each other as self-organizing teams, and they loved that. It made them feel good. Now that leads me to this interesting question. Is it the happiness of, is it the success of these practices, Scrum practices, Agile practices, that leads to people being happier? Or is it happy people, such as yours truly, introducing successful practices? Chicken and egg. Which of the two? So let me see some hands. How many of you think that it is usually success that leads to happiness? That is often successful practices, success of the organization helps people feel happier in their jobs. All right, 1, 2, 3, okay, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that's 0.72% of the audience. I'm very good at this. Yeah. How many of you think it is the opposite, that it is usually a happiness of people that leads to companies being more successful? How many think? All right, that is 99.13%. There was one person who didn't raise his hand. So it is a majority, clearly, who agrees with Sean Aker of the happiness advantage. We know that happiness is the precursor to success, not merely the result. But, interestingly enough, Phil Rosenzweig of the Halo Effect says, well, employee satisfaction leads to high performance, but actually the reverse effect is stronger. Performance leading to happiness. But he called it satisfaction, not happiness, which many researchers say is more or less the same thing, but others say, no, it's something different. So it is very complicated. Makes my job a lot of fun, all that figuring out that I have to do. In either case, so despite the complexity, the simple fact is happy workers do more. They achieve more. There's some, quote, 12% more productivity. It makes sense to have people be happier in their jobs, because you will get more done as a company. So I researched this once. I thought it was interesting to understand what helps people be happier in their work lives. I remember I was in Argentina at that time. Fascinating country. Nothing works. Everyone is happy. It's amazing. It's amazing. You arrive at Buenos Aires airport, there's not a single cash machine that is able to give you any money. And they all have different error messages. It's amazing. But they're happy. Good food, dancing in tango, they don't care, whatever. So, anyways, I was there in the marina doing a bit of research, sipping a cocktail that I paid for by reselling the air conditioning from my hotel room. And then I found these happiness causes. Thank someone and be appreciative to other people. Give something to another person every now and then. Help someone who is in need of assistance. Eat well. I had some good food just now, an hour ago. Exercise, work out regularly. Rest well, sleep sufficiently. Experience new things, run experiments. Hike outdoors, enjoy nature, the fresh air. Meditate, mindfulness practices. Socialize, hang out with other people, friends at work. Aim for a goal, you see the purpose appearing again. And smile whenever you can, even when you have to fake it. That's what some people say. Amy Cuddy is very popular with her TED Talk about body postures and facial muscles and how that influences your brain. If you're not feeling very happy, just paint that smile on your face. And then your facial muscles will trick your brain into believing you're happier, and you will be happier. Ta-da, problem solved. Amazing science. So I call these 12 steps to happiness because happiness is not a destination, it is simply a path that you decide to take. Right? Every step makes you feel happier. I ran 17 kilometers this morning. I'm a runner. I love that. It makes me feel happy throughout the day. It makes me feel good. So that is exercise. Some people like meditation, mindfulness. I tried. I'm really, really bad at this. But some people make much more progress than I do. And it helps them be happier. There are lots of things companies can do to contribute to this. I was at a company in Spain, the happiest, the greatest place to work in Spain, and they had an alegría room, a happiness room. It was full of yoga mats and pillows and all that crap for meditation and mindfulness practices. Awesome! So people could go to the room, close the door, and be mindful for 20 minutes or something. So meditation, done. I know other companies where they have kudo cards, where one of the chapters in my book describes it. You have thank you cards, handwritten notes that you write each other, and then you put them on a coffee machine or your computer or whatever. And people enjoy that, writing each other a thank you note. And that is both thanking and giving at the same time. Just make those cards available as manager or leader. I once went with my software developers outside into the sun, in the fresh air, to do code reviews. They thought it was weird. They thought it was silly. I said, print those classes and interfaces. I'm a software developer. I know what I'm talking about. So print that shit. We go outside and to do a code review. I had to drag them from their caves outside into the fresh air. And they were like, oh my God, what is that bright thing up there? I said, that's the sun, you idiot. I'd never seen it before. So we sat in the grass or on tree trunks or whatever, I don't remember. And it was fun. It was enjoyable. I call that hiking. It just means getting out in the fresh air. It was actually only 50 meters, I admit. But for some people, it was a long way. So I have this as a poster that you can download, 12 Steps to Happiness. And it's just a reminder that we as teams, managers, leaders, don't care who you are, what position you have. You can contribute to the happiness of people by making sure they eat well, they give each other compliments, they meditate every now and then, or enjoy the fresh air, etc. All right, I see about 10 more minutes. Is that correct? Yeah. All right, good. Then I'm sort of on schedule, more or less. Here's an interesting one. Culture and value stories. Does anyone know from which company I stole this screenshot? Our values are responsibility and sustainability. Does anyone know? Volkswagen, very good. Volkswagen, right. Our values are responsibility and sustainability. Uh-huh. It's a rare case of German humor, I think. So sorry. Sorry. Dutch. So, Volkswagen is by far not the worst example. There have been others much worse. Uber has been in the news continuously. Everything was wrong about Uber, basically, in the last couple of years, right? Discrimination, sexism, faking everything, and it's disastrous. But they're trying to turn the company around. Enron, it destroyed itself. It had values, integrity, openness, honesty. They were thieves. They were stealing from shareholders, basically. The whole company collapsed. Absurd. So we have companies sometimes that have the things on their websites, values, but there's not actually what they're practicing in real life, right? There's a discrepancy between the two. And we don't want that. At least in an agile context, we want people to be happy and proud of their company, so these things should not be happening. I'm inspired by companies that have handbooks, culture books, where the espoused values, as the researchers call them, are also presented as enacted values, real stories of how we do what is on the website. How are we really sustainable and responsible? Because that's what we claim to be. Zappos was one of the first companies in the world with a culture book with wonderful illustrations and photos and stories of what it means to work at that company. But many others have followed. You can simply type culture code on SlideShare and you will find many of such decks nowadays of companies expressing themselves with values but also with stories, comparing document values with actual stories of actual behaviors, because you need to reinforce those values all the time. There's an interesting practice described in this book, Reinventing Organizations. Some people might have seen it before. It's a very popular book in the agile world. And the author, Frederick Laloux, says, many organizations have annual value days where everyone is invited to revisit the organization's purpose, values, and how they live up to them. You see that? You get together, you talk about, what did we do? Is it true? What's on the website? Do we have examples of that? It's important to discuss these things. One problem, this happens only once per year. That's not enough. You need faster feedback cycles. That would be agile, to do this continuously. So I like stories of teams who do this as part of their retrospectives, for example. Have we done things in the last sprint or two that resonate with our values? What are the examples? Or they give each other kudo cards specifically for the values. I've saw a company that printed the values actually on the Cuddy card. So you give somebody a card for doing something that resonated with one of the corporate values. That makes sense. Here's one of the most popular tweets that I have seen in the last couple of years. The culture of any organization is shaped by the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate. Thousands of retweets this got. Many people recognized it. If there's some bad behavior and the leader does not intervene, then that is going to be the baseline of your culture, basically. And everything else will grow from there. Yeah. I prefer the positively phrased version that I came up with, which the culture of any organization is shaped by the best behavior the leader is willing to amplify. Sadly, this did not get thousands of retweets. Still working on it. Take pictures, tweet, hashtag. Probably you need a bit of both. Right? Sometimes you need this, but hopefully more often you do that. As some say with marriage, every now and then criticism is maybe deserved and necessary, but compensated with at least 5 times more compliments, right? Because the criticism is harder. It makes more impact. So more compliments, 5 times more compliments. The good stuff. And you need to tell stories, share stories. One of my teams has a value stories channel where they actually discuss the things that resonate with the team values. And we have a bonus tool, a peer-to-peer bonus tool, where we actually have boldness and flexibility, etc., values that we can attach to the points that the team members give each other for work well done. This is the normal part of the team, I think, as you can see. And the team recently, well, it's been a year now since, I think, had a discussion about all the stories that they already shared and looked at what emerged frequently, and then they came up with these 3 values. Dare to be bold, always be kind, and make it creative. Those are the 3 values of that team. And I can't remember them. I can't remember them. I'm really, really bad at lists. Everyone is bad at lists, basically. When I go to the supermarket for 3 items, I come home with 2. And then I'm like, oh my God, the milk, forgot, again. Geez, how hard can it be? So I'm not good at remembering lists, but I'm very good at remembering stories. And after this session, you will remember plenty of stories that I told you. You're not going to remember the 7 bullet points that I showed you. That's not important, but you'll remember stories. So we have to do storytelling as an organization. What are the stories? Which ones do we capture in our handbook, on our value stories channel, etc. All right, last 5 minutes, last example. Feedback wrap. This is actually a topic that I do not have decent slides for, so I just copy-pasted the chapters of my book. It's plugging my book at the same time. So let's read it out together. The purpose of... Oh, just kidding. So how to give feedback. There's something called nonviolent communication. Maybe some of you have heard of it. It is almost similar to what I have in my book. If you think somebody deserves criticism or you have a point of improvement for them, this is the pattern that works marvelously well. First, describe your context. This is a situation where I am in. If it is remote, like over emails, I am now in Düsseldorf, Germany, and I just suffered a terrible train ride from Brussels. Wasn't true, but I'm just making it up on the spot. And then step 2, list your observations. I saw that the new release of the app had some bugs in it because this does not work and this does not work. And inside you say, oh, for Christ's sake, why is it not working? Jeez, I told you. You don't do that, right? You just say, this does not work and that does not work. And then step 3, express your emotions. Makes me feel a bit unhappy because I need to show this to the customer 1 hour from now, and that doesn't make me feel very good. And then step 4, sort by value, make or express what would be valuable for you. It would be nice if next time when I offer something to a client that all the bugs have already been taken care of in the test phase. And with a suggestion, is there anything that the guy can help you out with to make sure that testing is done properly or whatever? It is a very respectful way of offering feedback, constructive criticism to a team or to another person, because at no point you're going to say, you did a bad job, I hate you over there, or something like that. No, you just say, this is what I saw. Nobody can disagree with what you saw. You're just offering facts. And this is how I felt. Nobody can disagree with how you felt, because it's my emotions. You cannot disagree with my emotions. This is what I saw. This is how I felt. Now you deal with it. With those facts and those emotions on my side. It works wonders. We integrated that as part of our peer-to-peer 360 feedback session that we had recently with one of my teams. It was wonderful. We had it was the first time we did this. Each of us had the instruction to come up with 2 compliments and 1 improvement suggestion for each of the other team members. Well, that took us maybe an hour to prepare, because we had 8 team members, so 7 people. You had to come up with 2 compliments, 1 point of criticism. And then we joined the online meeting, because my teams are all remote. They're all over the world, lots of different countries. And one by one, every person asked the others for the compliment. So Thomas, he's our agile coach. He started, and he has everyone, give me your first compliment. Makes you feel good. You get 7 compliments. Oh, nice, 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 nice. And then give me your suggestion for improvement. And then what we did was we held up our mascot. Because Thomas found research that says criticism is easier to take when you have a mascot in your hands. It's true. It's true. A puppet or whatever. So we grabbed whatever we could find in our house. I was in a hotel. This was somewhere on a desk. Okay, so that became my mascot. And then together with your mascot, you take the criticism and the good suggestions for improvement that were all very respectful, offered with a feedback wrap format. I saw this happened, and this is how it made me feel. And you say, thank you. You don't argue, you just say, thank you for giving me that input. And then you end with, now give me your other compliment. Now I can use your other compliment. Right? So again, last round, and it makes you feel good again. Took 50 minutes per person. Wonderful. One of the best meetings that I ever had. So, wrapping it all up. Every now and then, some people say we should celebrate failure. We should not just celebrate success. Did you know there are fail conferences in the world where people get together to just celebrate failure? Yay, I wasted 1 million euros of investors' money. Woo! Party, party. How many of you think that it makes sense every now and then to celebrate the failure? Let me see some hands. Let me see hands. All right, that's half of the audience. Okay. How many of you say, well, that sounds very nice, but I still prefer to celebrate the successes, because that makes a lot more sense? All right, again, half of the audience. How many of you say, let's just celebrate everything? Failure, success, doesn't matter, party all the time. Everyone, weird city, Düsseldorf, doesn't make any sense. Crazy, crazy. So this is the real deal. I have this diagram based on the work of Donald Reinertsen, who writes very, very difficult, impossible to read books. He is 10 times smarter than I am, but I am a 10 times better illustrator than Donald is. Donald said to me, no, Jurgen, you're 100 times better than I am. We disagree on the details, but it doesn't matter. So I visualize what he described with information theory, queuing theory, and all that stuff. He said, good practices usually lead to success. That's why we call them good practices. Duh. Okay. Every now and then, good practices fail. So sometimes they don't work. That happens. That happens. We have mistakes or bad practices, but I prefer to call them mistakes, that usually lead to failure. Right? But every now and then, mistakes succeed. You do something stupid and you get away with it. Actually, you earn money with it or something like that. That happens. Some of the best inventions in the world happened because somebody made a mistake. Right? Like safety glass was discovered when a chemist dropped a glass. Just dropped it, knocked it off the table. But it didn't shatter. It just cracked, but it stayed whole. And he went, what was in that glass? And then he found the substance with which you can make safety glass. So it started with an accident. Experiments are the things we do when we have no idea whether the outcome is going to be success or failure. That's the whole point of calling them experiments, right? And it turns out that learning is optimal here in the middle. That's what the science says. When you run an experiment, when the chance is 50-50 of succeeding and failing, the rate of learning and information inquiry is optimal. I have no idea what I'm saying now. I'm just channeling Donald at this moment. So learning is optimal in the middle. We don't learn anything when we repeat good practices. We don't learn anything when we make mistakes. And we learn something when good practices fail. That is interesting, but doesn't happen that often. And we learn when mistakes succeed. Again, doesn't happen that often. Now, when somebody says, celebrate failure, which is a very popular phrase, particularly in the agile world, at conferences, yeah, celebrate failure. Donald goes like this. Stupid, stupid. That would be this part of the diagram. Why would you celebrate you being an idiot? Huh? This part, yeah. You make a mistake, predictable failure, don't celebrate. You already knew that there was a high chance of failing. You just validated that it still doesn't work. Okay. So it makes sense to celebrate success, but the problem, and this is a cultural issue at many organizations where only success is being celebrated, you incentivize people to move in that direction. They will just repeat good practices, because then you have a higher chance of success, and only success is being celebrated. And then nobody wants to run the experiments, because you might fail, scary, and then we're not going to celebrate. You know. Then we don't get a compliment. So I say celebrate success and celebrate learning. Okay, ring the bell every now and then for learning, even in the cases when you failed. That is what people usually mean when they say celebrate failure. They don't mean celebrate failure. They may celebrate learning, even when you failed. That is okay. Yeah, that's okay. So in the middle we find networks, complex adaptive systems, agile teams. They're great at running experiments. That is this part of the diagram. Networks are great at experimentation. Hierarchies are very good at repeating the same thing again and again, driving for efficiency, optimization. When they're big, we call them enterprises, those hierarchies. They have a reason for existing. Hierarchies are also great at repeating the same mistakes again and again. Then we usually call them governments in that case. And we need a bit of both. We need a bit of repeating good practices and running experiments at the same time. John Kotter, famous author in the management space, calls it the dual operating system. A bit of hierarchy and a bit of network. Because you need that network for the experimentation, figuring out new stuff with communities of practice and agile teams and everything, because they're great at discovering new stuff. That's the whole point of agile software development, is discovery of a new product, because every product is created only once. But then rolling it out again and again, producing the same iPhone a billion times, that is pure hierarchy there. It's pure efficiency. And then you drive for optimization with Gantt charts and everything. Nothing wrong there. So, by all means, celebrate success if you also celebrate learning at the same time. I call it celebration grids. That's another management 3.0 practice that people like using at the end of workshops or at the end of a retrospective. And you just gather people around a whiteboard and have some sticky notes and discuss, all right, what are the experiments that we can be running in the next iteration? What are the good practices that failed, perhaps, or the mistakes that succeeded? Very interesting discussions. Makes it a very visual exercise, because some of you might recognize the 3 standard Scrum questions for retros that some people use. What should we start doing? What should we stop doing? What should we continue doing? What you should start doing is run new experiments. What you should stop doing is anything that falls here. What you should continue doing is anything that falls there. Same thing, only in a visual manner. And this is a picture by a Dutch company. You can see that because they finished the retrospective just before 5 o'clock. Yay, done, everyone go home, all right. Finished. So that's it, and hopefully you recognize those 7 silver bullets. Build for meaning. Your company should have a purpose, maybe with imagery and symbols and exposition of your artifacts and identity symbols. Innovate all the time as a manager. Don't just ask the agile teams to innovate. You as a team leader and as a manager have a responsibility to innovate in the way you manage those teams as well. That requires more learning, running more experiments, adding a dash of playfulness, because that helps people be more experimental, and a bit of happiness in the system, and then manage the system around them. Don't manage the people. Like I gave you the example of 360-degree feedback. That was an entire team giving each other feedback. But I helped with the Agile coach setting up the constraints of that peer-to-peer feedback system. And then they could manage each other, basically. So thank you very much for listening, and hope to see you another time again soon.
Ask a question concerning OKR and KPIs, because you try to differentiate between the two. Yeah. Is it not the case that OKR is for people who can motivate themselves, whereas you need KPI to motivate others who need management motivation?
Interesting question. So is it not like you need KPIs to motivate other people? And OKR is needed for people who can motivate themselves? I would say no. I would say everyone, if you manage and lead in the right way, then you can find how people are motivated, what would motivate them within their context of their jobs. I have motivated many people without setting targets for them. And telling them you get a bonus if you achieve this target, and you get a punishment basically if you don't. Because when people don't make their target, it is perceived as a punishment, basically. That is traditional management. And I believe that everyone can be motivated with a purpose, with a great looking environment, with social engagement in the office. Plenty of things that I discussed have motivated people. As I said, turnover dropped from 17% to basically 0. People were more motivated after I introduced agile practices. But at no point did I give anyone KPIs. I basically made them responsible for their own progress. Interesting question, thanks. Other question?
Some things I recognize is coming from positive psychology. We know Mr. Martin Seligman. Yeah. He has this kind of research, and what I heard about the way he is now changing the concept of giving therapy to people with depression and other things, he's focusing on the strengths first, and then with the power of the strengths that give a good solution, then it's much easier to work on the weak parts of personality and the problem area. Yes. Would you agree that these kinds of practices can help? And you did some in your practice here.
Yes, fascinating. Yeah, indeed. Seligman is referred to many times. I've read a number of happiness books. Just to write that last chapter on happiness that I have in my own book, and Seligman came up again and again. Positive psychology, focusing on people's strengths rather than their weaknesses, because we have a tendency as traditional managers to look at all the things that are not going well and they say this has to be done better and that has to be done better and over there that sucks, etc. And actually it turns out it is often more effective to focus on the good stuff, because if you give people compliments for what goes well and you just ignore for a while the things that are not going that well, then they are more motivated to solve those issues themselves. Or in some cases, those issues disappear in the first place, because nobody's paying attention to them anymore. There's a fascinating example in the book Reinventing Organizations of positive psychology. It was a company in France where a lot of equipment was being stolen by employees. They were missing stuff all the time. And then they introduced all kinds of rules, and you had to check out the equipment and sign and everything, but just more stuff got stolen. Until at some point they turned around and said, okay, from now on we're not going to pay attention anymore to what is missing. If you want to borrow stuff from the company, fine, but please bring it back. And then nothing was stolen anymore. Why? Because it was no fun anymore. There were all the fun part of how do we get those computers out of the building. It disappeared. And people found other things to busy themselves with. So and the management started focusing on the good stuff. So the negative part of the culture just disappeared. I thought it was a wonderful example of thinking in the other direction. Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah.
Originally, I was intended to ask you about people coaching you, how you get coached, but after you entitled Emperor, God, Afterlord, or Overlord, I think the better question would be, what is inspiring you? So how do you get your ideas? Is it just looking into data, so researches, or what is the inspiration for you?
I love the question. Thank you for asking. I have asked one or two people, do you want to be my coach or mentor? But it's really hard to get people to make that time. I am somebody's mentor, and it takes time. So, and I feel a bit bad about claiming that time from someone who can teach me something, because you have to like aim higher and higher, and you get with busier and busier people, basically. So I just get inspired by lots of different books and articles and people that I talk with. Like my traditional approach to anything that I want to learn about, whether it is running or happiness or whatever, I read at least 5 books by 5 different authors who agree on 80% but disagree on 20%, and that gives me a good picture. It's a bit like OKRs, right? I have at least 4 measurements. So those different books, the different insights are my measurements of the world. Okay, so this expert thinks like this about that topic, and this expert thinks like this, and then 2 or 3 more, and now I have to figure out what my opinion is. And that, because I love reading books, so that is my preferred way of consuming insights from around the world. I just do the research, what are the best highly rated books on this topic, and then I read. And then because I travel around the world so much, I meet so many people to talk with and have coffees with and exchange ideas with. And I am fortunate now to have a giant network of people who like talking with me and offering their ideas, so no shortage of input, which is a privileged position that I am in. So I don't think I need that personal mentor or coach. It would be nice, but I think it's okay for now. Yeah. But thanks for the question.
Probably one more tricky question.
Okay, go ahead.
Could you share one example of your experiment in team that failed, but you still learned a lot, that actually more than you expected?
Oh, wow. Can I... Yeah, no, it's... can I share something that failed, but that I learned a lot from? I think, to stick with one of the topics, OKRs is still, for our team, not working optimally, and we keep modifying it until it works for us. So I would say, some people say you only fail when you give up, right? So I have failed with previous iterations of OKRs because my numbers are always really, really bad. So in that sense, I failed. But with the iteration that I now have, which is until the end of February, 2 of my 3 OKRs are already not applicable anymore because the environment has changed. And so I have 1 OKR left of the other of the 3, because the other 2, they're like, okay, I can stop measuring because the things have changed around me. It makes no sense to measure anymore. So that makes me think, and I have discussed that today with my team. Next week we have a face-to-face. We get together in Amsterdam, the whole team of 10 people, and one thing on the agenda is how will we change the OKRs procedure to make it fit how we work. And one thing on my mind is to move more to a sort of continuous flow of OKRs, where I have 2 or 3, but if one doesn't work anymore, I just throw it out and immediately replace it with another because a slot has become available on my tiny Kanban board of OKRs, right? And then also I could say at one, okay, I'm now sick and tired of measuring this. I think I did fine, so let's throw it out and replace it with something else in a more continuous flow kind of style. So if one thing that is very important hasn't worked for me yet, it is how OKRs is traditionally described by Google, but Google is a very, very big company, and I have a startup of 10 people. The environment is very different. And that is also a good message for other managers and leaders. You just don't give up. The principles behind those practices make a lot of sense. Just keep tweaking and kneading it as if it's a bit of clay until it is in a good format so that it fits your context. Because I fully believe in my team and I giving targets for ourselves and not to each other, and having multiple metrics for one objective. All those things we keep because they make a lot of sense. Thank you too. All right. Thank you.